Alright, so in our next lesson here, we're going to actually go ahead and texture all 6 sides of this cube, and I just want to show you some of the limitations that the program has as far as texturing and some of the workarounds that you can use to get around those limitations. The nice thing is you can really you can apply a texture to just about any kind of part or polygon you want, and there's several different methods to do that. So if you ever run up against a limitation, it's really not necessarily something you can't do. It's just a matter of figuring out a way to do it. And a lot of times that involves splitting the part up into separate parts and using the textures a little bit to your advantage. So to start this particular video out, I'm going to go ahead and texture the front and the back and the left and the right sides of this cube. So I'll go ahead and bring up my texture again. There it is, tutorial. Select OK. And this is for the front side. It'll bring up the texture. And I want to make the textures look uniform across the entire set of sides of this particular cube. So again, to do that, I can come over here and use my data blocks as to my advantage. So I'll go ahead and make each texture 256 pixels wide. The Y size, the Y height over here is not actually that important, because again, the program is going to stretch this texture down the entire vertical surface or vertical length of the cube. So 256 for the width on all 4 sides here, and we'll just take our second to do that, and we'll see how that looks, and then we'll take a look at texturing the top and the bottom, and then we'll kind of go from there. So again, I can do it over here. I could drag it to 256 very carefully and then release it, or I can just barely start the texture definition and then clean it up by actually entering the data or the numbers, the pixel data, into the number blocks over here, which is almost easier to do than trying to very precisely place your cursor on the texture sheet and making it work like that. So almost done here. Last one to do is the right side, and again we'll just stretch the cursor or the texture definition out. 256. We'll hit OK, OK, and now we've got a nice cube that looks nice and uniform all the way across. You can even see this little extra dark little line or gap in here. Okay, if I go to the top and the bottom, fortunately this time they did not texture, so those are open to texture as well. So we can go ahead and place a different texture on the top and the bottom, and we'll just make it look like a building or something. So we'll make the top dark. Oh, I don't know. Let's just put a sample texture on it. It doesn't really matter. Hit OK, OK, and again you can see the sides have kept their textures. They haven't strayed from that. You could basically consider that the roof. Okay, and that's the bottom of the structure. Now again, if we're modeling a scenery object, let me bring the grid back up here. This, as it sits on my grid right now, it's actually half below ground. So what I would need to do if it was an actual scenery object, again just to review, would be to move this up so that it's sitting flat on the surface. There we go. Hit Shift C to center the whole thing back up again. Now I can get rid of my grid. And again, if we were going to go ahead and make this into a scenery object, we're not going to see this bottom part of the cube. So we might as well run the tutorial like we would if we were actually designing an object. So let's go ahead and get rid of that bottom surface. And remember, to do that, you can just come to your polygon mode, okay, and then use your arrow keys or your P key or your N key until you get around to that bottom polygon. And then when you get there, just hit delete, and the bottom goes away. Okay, so there essentially we have our structure. Okay, and again, if we want to make the texture a little skinnier on one side or two of the sides, we can go back into that exact side. Let's say the front and the back, and we can make those skinnier or multiply them using that, using the entire width of the texture, or making the texture definition bigger. Just all different kinds of things you can do. So let's do that real quick. I'll go back into part mode just to make sure. So F5, I'm in part mode. F4 to texture mode. Front. So I want to make the front have twice as many lines basically. So I can come back into properties, and since it's a 256 pixel wide, I'll just double that. I'll go to 512. Okay, and notice again, I don't have to go to select because it's already selected over here in the part assignment or the texture assignment box. I can just go to properties and then clean it up in the properties window. 256 to 512. OK, OK. And now we'll blow this up here so we can see it a little bit better. So now the one side has a little bit thicker lines than the opposing sides, or the opposite sides. Okay, so that's something you can do. You can use that to your advantage to make your texture look a little bit differently. Even though we're using the same exact sample of the texture, we can change that around a little bit so that it has a nice look to it. Alright, so let's undo that. There we go, we undid that. And now let's make the top match at least one of the sides. Okay, and the easiest way to make the top match one of the sides would be to just give it the same exact texture definition. Okay, so notice there's no bottom here, no bottom texture definition. We don't need one for the bottom. So we'll just select the top here and we'll redo this guy into our 256, and then it should all kind of look the same here. So stretch it out, 256, 6, okay, okay, and there we go. We have a nice uniform looking structure. Obviously it's going to be perpendicular to one, or to two of the line, or two sides of the lines, but it should be relatively the same. Now notice here how the line, the middle, that darker line lines up on this side, okay, but it doesn't line up on this side. Well, again, we can fix that, and I believe this is going to be one of the textures. I'm not sure if that's the left or the right or what. Okay, an easy way to figure out what side of that part that it's on is to go into polygon mode. So again, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get, and if you can see it in the video here, on the top surface, it has a dark line basically right in the middle, and that lines up with that's probably the front surface of the cube here, but it does not line up with the back surface of the cube here, and that's because of the way the texture was applied to the back of the cube. So what I believe we should be able to do is just go right into parts, go to back, go to properties, and I think if we invert the X pattern and hit OK, it should now line up. Let's see if I'm a liar. Nope, did it do it? Oh, I did the wrong one. Okay, so it's the front that needs fixed. The back was fine. Or I tell you what, we could even do it a different way. Now that we've had the front and the back in the same, basically in the same alignment, if I come in here and I just invert the X on the top, I think that's gonna straighten out my texture for me. So let me try that. Top, properties, and invert the X so that it applies that texture definition backwards, and I think that should line everything up. So there we go. So that's what I was talking about, that little extra darker line there in the middle. If you can see that, now we've got it lined up perfectly, okay, with both sides. And so that's an example where using that invert feature can actually help you to make your texture look nice and uniform and nice and smooth. Okay, so that's the entire box. Again, notice looking up through the bottom of it, the polygons are obviously facing outwards, so they're not going to display anything. Okay, so that would be a typical structure for you. All right, so that's one way to do things. Now, in a second here, we're going to take a look at ways to apply textures that otherwise you would not be able to do by basically splitting the part up into multiple parts, texturing each of the individual parts, and then you can actually join them back together. But then I want to show you what happens when you join those parts back together. Okay, so here's our cube part, and I think for this next little exercise I'll go ahead and assign a different texture to the front of the cube here so that we can kind of see how this works. If we try to use this corrugated siding sample, it's not going to work because it's the same identical sample all the way across. So I'm going to come down here and use this other basically what is a type of a front of a hangar door type of sample of a texture here. We'll get the whole thing, hit OK, OK, and then there's the front. So let's copy this, and let's copy this cube a couple times here and move it over a little bit so that we have multiple versions of it. And again, the nice thing is when you copy a part and then you paste a new part, it also copies that part's texture definition, so you don't actually have to go back in and re-texture the new part as you've copied it. And as we get into some of the further videos, you'll see that this use of copy and paste is actually very, very useful and will save you a ton of time when it comes to texturing parts. So if you have, for example, a bunch of parts in your model that are identical, that all need the same texture, sometimes it's easier to just make one, copy that part, and paste a bunch of different copies of it because they will already have the texture definitions assigned to them. So what I'm going to do is just make a copy of this cube here, and then I'll make a copy of this second cube. So again, copy, paste to get it identical on the opposite side. I'll come in here and change its x-axis location to the opposite, or the reciprocal, negative 22.5 meters. Shift C to center up the whole project. And again, you can see here that the whole project is kept the texture definitions all the way across. Okay. So that's 3 separate parts. Now, if I join all 3 parts, hit the A key to highlight all of them, J key to join them, and part center axis to part. Now, if I don't change a thing, if I don't go back in and redefine the textures, they will stay just like they are. Okay, and then if I need to add something or whatever to the part, I can always split them back up. But right now, notice it copied the 3 separate textures. It looks like I actually have them upside down. There we go. Let's get rid of those bottoms again. Let me get rid of the bottom polygons real quick here. 1, 2, 3. There we go. That way I can tell what's up and what's down. Now that I've joined these parts together, think about what's going to happen if I go back in here to F4, okay, where I've already defined this front side texture selection as this little set of hanger doors. Think about what's going to happen now to these 3 separate cubes now that they are actually all considered one part. Okay, when I hit OK, it should stretch that same little 2-door texture definition. It should try to stretch that across the face of all 3. Okay, which it has done. And you can't see it very well, but notice where the center line is now of the door. Let me expand it here and go out a little bit. Hello, there we go. So it does kind of look the same, but you can see here's the separator between the two 2 doors or whatever. If I use the back function to see where it was at, notice we had that one texture applied to each of the 3 front surfaces. When I went back in to define the texture again or change a part of the texture, it went ahead and did what we told it to do, was basically try to apply that texture to the entire front surface of our part. Now if we look at the back, it's going to take this same nice uniform looking kind of vertical line structure, and it's going to stretch that 256 wide pixel definition. It's going to stretch that across all 3 surfaces. Okay, so there may be times when you don't want that. Okay, so I'm going to show you basically 2 ways to preserve this or to fix this now that we've kind of run ourselves into this little situation that, hey, we don't we don't want this, or we don't want the texture to look like this, or we don't want the part to look like this. So one way to fix that is to take this new part that you've joined up here, now make a copy of it. Again, it will copy the texture definitions, okay, and then take that new copied part and break it up to just the front surface, and then we can go back in and individually texture each front or whatever we want to do. So let me do that here. Let me go back in. Let me copy the part. Okay, I've copied it. It's in the temporary memory. I'm going to delete, not the back, Michael. There we go. I'm going to delete the front surface of each one of these cubes. Delete. Okay, so now we just have our front, top, and our back. Go back into part mode. I'm going to paste a new copy of this part, or this box, so you can see down here in the corner it says box.1. If I scroll it, you have box.2, box.1. And I think then with this new part, which was box.1, I believe, I'm going to go ahead and eliminate all the other surfaces of this new part. So in this case, I'll just delete all the back points, and that'll leave me, and I'll center this axis up to the front. That'll leave me with these 3 front surface parts as their own separate individual part. Notice the back and the top and the sides are a separate part now, so I can go ahead and come in here and tweak those parts separately if I needed to fix them. And again, I can fix this back by just I think I can multiply the 256 times 3, which is 768, is that right? So if I come back in here to my original part, I go to the back, and I don't need the front anymore. Let's make sure I'm not clearing out the wrong one. Good. I don't need the front texture anymore because that's not part of this particular model. If I come in here to the back, which was originally 256, I want to, in this case, take advantage of this texture. I can go 768, I believe it is, which will multiply that corrugated steel look times 3, and then that kind of restores that. So that's one way to do it if I have the right kind of texture in there. But obviously that's not going to work with our hanger door texture. So what I need to do is go into my other part here, okay, which is these 3 separate front facades, if you will, of the building, and I need to fix that. So now we're left with this problem of how do we get the individual two hanger door texture applied to each of the 3 front faces of this one part. And again, if I go back into my texture, if I try to tile it, that's not going to work because, and I can get rid of my right, left, and back for this particular one. If I try to tile it, that's not going to work because it's just going to simply copy the other portions of the texture sheet. So I guess what I'm getting at here is to really truly solve this problem. The only way we're going to do that is to take this new part that we've created, okay, make a copy of it, and now you can start deleting its brothers over here, or its sisters, whatever you want to call it. Delete that. Okay, go part, center axis to part. Now I'll go back to F4, since we've already got our properties and our definition, our texture definition in here selected for just the two doors. Hit OK again, and now we've restored that single 2-door texture to this single part. And there's a different way to do this. We could copy this single part if we wanted to, and paste it and move it, or we could just go paste the original part, okay, use the point mode, delete the 2 outboard portions of this new part. Okay, the texture definition goes with the copy and the paste, so all I have to do is go F4, okay, and now I've got the middle one looking like I want. And to finish that off, I'll go paste one more time. Now I'll delete the sections of this part that I don't need over here, these 2 guys. Okay, delete. And now if I go F4, let's see what happens here. F4, and let's see if with the axis, even with the axis off center, it still applied the texture correctly, which sometimes it won't do, but I can always fix that, and I should always fix that unless you want it there on purpose. So now I've gone back in here, okay, and I've created these 3 separate facades with that one little piece of texture. I would have not been able to do that with the part joined as it currently was. So I actually had to take the original part, which was the 3 cubes joined together. I had to split that part up into the, so it had like a front facade on it, and then the back and the other sides of it. Texture those one way, and then come back in, copy paste, delete, do all kinds of fun stuff, but basically make 3 separate parts. Now what I can do is take all of these parts, come back, okay, and join them all up together, and nothing happens, okay, and that's because we haven't redefined or given it a new texture definition since we joined all these parts together. So now I have my hangar building, okay, you're all happy with it. Let's say you're all happy with it. Now you want to put a roof on the top. So you get all excited, you come in here and you go, okay, top, I need to put a roof on my top, okay, or a top on my roof, whatever, I'll just use this generic section right here. I hit okay, I get excited, I don't think about it, and bam, okay, you just lost your texture definition. And the reason for that was because this original part was just the back sides in the left and the right side. So originally, before we put the top texture in there, this is all we had was the back, left, and right. The front, notice, didn't have any texture assigned to it. So what happened was when I came in here and I hit OK, it basically dropped out that front side texture, and there's a very specific reason for that. And let me back it up a couple steps and show you what happens here. So here we were back to kind of our start of this, where we had everything the way we wanted it. We had the 3 separate front parts and then this main back part. So again, here's the part as it was normally, or as we had it. Okay, we've got the two separate, we've got the main, which is the top and the sides, and then we've got the front three separate parts as a front facade. Okay. What I ended up doing was going back and joining all these together, okay, and then hitting OK, and then you saw we lost our front texture definition. And the reason for that is if I look, I go to this main part, which is all the other sides, and I look at its texture definition. Okay, we'll bring it up, and you can see there's no front texture assigned to that. Okay, so when I come in here and I join these parts all together, whatever is the last part, okay, that I highlight before I join the parts together, when this new joined part comes out and you go into the texture definition, it's going to have that old parts, that last one you highlighted before you join them all together, it's going to have that particular part's texture definitions. Okay, so if you go back in and you try to do anything else to that model at that point, it's going to go with whatever that original old part had. Okay, so again, this is the first one I selected to join this. Whoops, let me undo that here. There we go. First one I selected to join, the second one I selected to join, the third one I selected to join, and the last one I selected to join. And I hit J, and I go in here and look. It's gonna keep the part texture assignments of that very last part. Okay, so if I hit OK right now, I will lose the front of these, the front textures of these parts. If I hit cancel, I won't. Okay, so what I'm getting at is just be very careful when you use this method of splitting parts and joining parts, which you're going to use it a lot. I don't want you to not use it, but you're going to use it a lot. But just be very careful that once you have your part set up the way you want it and textured the way you wanted it, and you've gotten around the texturing limitations of the program, make sure you don't go back in and then try to add something else to it, because at that point you're going to screw it up, or it's not, it's going to go back and try to spread that texture out over all the different sheets. So let's say that's what I did. Let's say I had this problem where I wanted to put a roof, a roof texture on this set of buildings or whatever, and I've already joined them. Okay, and I don't want to go back in and unjoin them and start from scratch. How can I fix this problem? Alright, so we were talking about adding a roof texture to this set of buildings, or this one single part, but I want to be able to add that roof texture and not disturb the textures that I've already set onto the front of it. So again, if I look at this one part that we've joined all together now, notice there's no front texture to it. Anything I put in the front here is not gonna work, because it's going to try to stretch it across the face of those three separate parts. So I can't touch it. I can't mess with this particular part the way it is and still get a roof texture on the top portion of the part and have it come out the way I want. So we have to figure out, again, going back to our technique of copy paste, we have to figure out a workaround. So take our box here. Our model is named box. So take that, copy it, and paste a new version of it. So box.1. So box.1 now, I just want the roof sections, or the top sections. So I will come in here to point mode. I will delete all the bottom sections of it. Let me center the axis to the part. And now what I have to do is I have to go back into that first part, which is named box. This is box.1. So I go back to box. There it is. And I have to eliminate the roof parts of this, and the only way to essentially eliminate the top or the roof parts is to do the polygon mode and delete those top polygons. So get to the top polygons, and let me scroll around here. That will work. That's 1, that's 2, and there's 3. If I look at my model, it should look exactly the same. It does. Okay, but just know now that we have two separate parts again. We have a roof structure here, and we have the main structure here. So now I can come in here to my roof structure, and I can texture that without any penalty or without changing the actual texturing of the original part. So now I'm free to do whatever I want. Now notice when I come in here and I select the part texture assignments, it still has, because I copied the part, it still has the texture assignments of that original part. So it has a front, back, left, and right. Well, we don't need any of that really, so we can just you can leave it in there, because all we're going to do is the top, and that's the only surface we have anyway. But there's, you might as well just clean it up and clear these out. And then all I have to do is select the top and tutorial, and why don't we put I don't know, why don't we put the white siding on here. So the white siding to match the back, which was 3 units. The original definition was 256 pixels times 3. That's our 768. So let's put our 768 up here, and it should come out looking okay. And there we go. And so the top actually kind of matches the back. Okay, so that's a way that we can work around some of the limitations as far as how the program will apply various textures to various parts. So what I'm saying again is if you want to texture something a certain way, there's almost always a way you can get there. Usually it involves taking the part, maybe splitting it by copying your original part and then pasting a new version of it. Take that new version, cut out all the parts of that new version that you don't need, texture that new version up to whatever you want. Okay, then go back to your original part, delete the polygons that will make up that section of your new section, and then again you can come back in here and you can join this all together, and you can leave it as one part. So notice again I have 2 separate parts right now. Okay, I can actually go in here and join all these up, A for all, and hit J and join, and nothing will change. So if I'm happy and I'm satisfied with this part or my design or my hanger or whatever, and that's the way I want to leave it, and I want to join this particular section of the part all together, I can do that. But again, just know that if I come in here, okay, to F4, and I try to change anything at this point, there's something I don't like, I decide I don't want to deal with that anymore, whatever, I want to change something, it's too late. Now that you've joined it back together, it's too late to do that. So you have to use the undo feature or the back button or whatever, or split it up again into separate parts, because again, if I hit OK, I lose everything I just did. Okay, so that's what I'm trying to get at in this short little video here, is that there are different ways to accomplish stuff inside the program as far as the texturing goes. There are ways to work around different stuff and texture different stuff, and a lot of that involves copying the original part and then making multiple copies of it, splitting out the different pieces of that part that you need, and then joining them back together. Okay, and technically, since I've joined a couple different parts back together to make this look good and make sure there's no gaps, I should go in here and go snap to scale, which will eliminate all the extra points, 30 points, make sure there are no gaps in here. Okay, so if you have any questions about this short little technique, the copy paste technique that is sort of a workaround for some of these part limitations, just let us know. I think you'll get into working on your own stuff, and you'll kind of come to a point where